Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Byte Marx stream. We're back. We are Rodring, and presumably, oh no! Ah, God. Yeah. No, it's worse than that, Callum. It's so much worse. I clicked the exit button, and without even bothering to confirm, the game just shut down by accident. uh, yeah, hey everybody. Uh, Guys, watch the streams with Callum and Miles. They're much better at doing it than I am. I'm not a good streamer, I will say that, but hopefully you guys can actually see the game now. Oh shoot, you can see the uh okay. Well, we get to play the can I actually there we go. Can you see the game? Okay. Okay, finally. We're back in business. Okay. So, okay. So, let's yeah. You guys can hear me, right? Did you tweet out the stream notification? Well, yeah, I was about to say you didn't send it to me. See, I'm not the only one who makes mistakes on this. Oh, they can't hear you. No, you're not. You're listed as being.
Can you hear me, folks?
I mean, I'm seeing the desktop audio thing come through, like when you talk.
Manabones, can you hear me? Say something if you can hear me. Okay, now they can, apparently. That's weird.
Yeah. Okay.
Our first t-shirt is definitely going to be Emilio is an old man and doesn't know how computers work.
Yeah. Well, I've always maintained that computer science was better before computers.
Which makes no sense. That's like saying astrophysics was better when we thought that the sky was a painting.
Well, I mean, that's a debate to have. People.
No, it's not. It's wrong.
Well,
it's incorrect.
Computer science technically predates computers because all you need to do computer science is a theoretical machine, like
for computer.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, like some of the earliest examples of computer science that we can point to is stuff that's working on like mechanical devices, that aren't what we'd recognize as being computers. A lot of it is just theoretical, where someone will describe something in theory without having to necessarily demonstrate it in practice. However, we have things.
Science sucks.
Well, yeah.
Every time I hear something about science, I'm like, oh, cool, that's the one with lasers, right? And they're like, no, actually, it's the one where we make things up.
Well, science is a process, Callum. There's never one way to do science. And also, I think we need to fix our trade deficit because we are running out of money. That's not good. Okay, so to get you guys back up, previously, the Republic had gone on an offensive and taken Odic, but I fought them back. However, we're trying to stabilize the situation. Right now, the Republic have consolidated around their planets, and they took Kola 4. I think our next target is probably going to be Alderaan, which is not going to be a fun ground battle because it looks like they have like 5 or 6 ground defenses. It's not going to be a fun time. I don't actually have much of an army, so I'm thinking about potentially.
I mean,
yeah,
we don't need an army to kill Alderaan. We need a moon.
Unfortunately, that's not in the tech tree for the. Can you imagine if the Confederates had access to a Death Star?
A Death Star.
I think what we're probably going to do is just spend a bunch of money on dwarf on Staps.
You know what? I will say it took an amazing amount of self-control for the new Star Wars movies to not invent the Death Galaxy.
The Death Galaxy.
And congrats to them on that.
And we're out of money. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do...
Holy shit, that was fast.
Well,
what?
we spent a bunch of money on stuff, you know.
Why does money matter anymore? We're at war.
Well, number one, we are the trade, confederacy. We can't just, like, spend infinite money.
But, like, we're conquering planets. Why does money matter?
Because we have to pay for stuff, right? Like...
Oh, man, but you've been having resource problems lately? Me too.
Your economy has to, like, function. Remember, war is not about who wins the most battles. It's about who can keep fighting the longest. So whoever has the better economy invariably will be the one who ends up winning the battle.
Oh. Look, dog, no. Okay. War is about who has the coolest swords.
And how do you get swords, Callum? You have to pay a blacksmith to make them.
You take them from men with weak arms.
Oh, God. They have a hypervelocity cannon.
That sounds fun. Why do we have one of those?
Because we're doing a space battle. Oh.
Oh, is it like a land-to-air missile thing?
Yeah. You missed it, but there was a gigantic beam of light that just struck one of our ships and took out like 80% of its health.
Shit.
Yeah. Luckily, they're retreating.
Hell yeah.
But, like, thankfully they didn't shoot our admiral. My word, I didn't know they had a hypervelocity gun. Imagine if they hit him and they died. That's like our
We still got them to run away, though.
Yeah, that's our only hero, Callum.
No, Emilio, you're my hero.
That's sweet. But that's not going to win this war. We gotta do battle with the Confederacy. I mean, with the Republic. But don't worry. One of the benefits of the Confederacy is that the units build really quickly. So even though it was not that, even though we spent a bunch of money, we're already back up to 4,000 credits.
Hell yeah.
I probably want to build a naval academy because we need more ship crews. And
how did they win the war, sir? Their naval academy.
Okay, you joke.
It's Ivy League.
You joke, but that is literally, how a lot of these wars end up being. Okay, so do you think we can take Alderaan?
Who has the best school system?
Yeah, do you think we could take Alderaan, or do you think we should try another
I
planet?
don't know, dude. You're the war guy. I'm the guy who sits here and makes observations and, like, dick jokes.
We only have one army. I really don't want to risk it.
That's not good. We should have more than one army. That feels like an important... when you go to the store next, pick up a couple more armies.
I'm building them, but we can only afford so many. And we can only build so many as
why?
well.
Do they eat? Do droids require sustenance?
They do require charging.
Just turn them off until we need them.
Oh, Wat Tambor is saying the Techno-Union armies have been doing their part. It's time for the rest of the council to do theirs.
fuck, we have to deal with unions now? This is gonna tank our cred as a communist
They want
show.
us to. They want us to take The Union is like, oh, we should take Coruscant, a planet that has the largest population of any planet in the entirety of Star Wars, and has like a 10-tier defense. Yeah.
Hey, you know what?
Campbell,
You know what
that's
the union wants? Win the war.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, no, we're trying.
They're just like, oh yeah, you
Get right on that, chief.
should just win the war and conquer the most important planet in the entire galaxy. Yeah, sure, we'll get right on that, buddy.
You know what I've noticed recently?
Yes.
The streams have taken a hard right turn away from fantasy content into sci-fi content.
Really? You know,
Monday, yeah, the Monday stream used to be Death's Door, and the Thursday stream used to be Hollow Knight, and now it's Star Wars and space engineers on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then art on Mondays. And I keep having to draw space stuff because people keep wanting me to draw space stuff.
Well, as a fan of science fiction, I gotta say I'm pleased with that result.
No,
Personally.
Mana Burnt. It wasn't intentional. It just snuck up on me.
You know, I think people go in cycles.
Much in the way that bricks don't.
Like, personally, I feel like I go in cycles where, like, sometimes I really want something like fantasy, but then sometimes I really want, like, sci-fi. You've kind of noticed this in the Wargames Club that I do. When I started in the very beginning, everyone was into fantasy. You know, everyone wanted, like, Lord of the Rings and all of that stuff. But now we're all playing Warhammer 40k.
Yeah, but Warhammer you can do fantasy or sci-fi. You just go from 40k to regular Warhammer.
Yeah. But like, it's Warhammer 40k is just like the more popular thing at present. You know.
Yeah. I think I'm very easily influenced. So for me, it's dependent heavily on what I'm like consuming at that moment. Like I watched 2 episodes of The Mandalorian recently, and I both rarely wanted to talk about Star Wars, and I rarely wanted to talk about westerns.
Oh well, I really like westerns as a genre. I feel like Star Wars really needs to. It's kind of gone away from a lot of that. I feel like they need to lean a bit more into it. You know.
Yeah, it needs to be that like lone samurai walks into like the first episode of Visions. Did you ever watch Visions?
Yeah, I saw a couple. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did see a couple episodes. Just I'm not super into anime.
Yeah, fair enough. The first episode of Visions is, I think, the one I would recommend to literally everyone. It's that black and white one of like the samurai walking into town. It's the one with the lightsaber umbrella.
Oh right, sure.
And it's in like grainy black and white, and it's shot like an old samurai movie. It's awesome.
Well, you know, there is a lot of influence of Kurosawa on, you know, George Lucas. You could argue that like the Jedi are not really knights per se; they're a lot closer to samurai in terms of
the Jedi Order was a shogunate. Basically.
Well, there were lots of like warrior monks that were active in Japan. I think they were like the Iki. I think that's what they were called, and they had guns. So you know, not quite the same thing, but.
I mean, the first trilogy of movies is very reminiscent of what Japan was like after the warring periods, when all the swords were confiscated.
Yeah, actually, if you, like, there is a lot of parallels to be drawn between, like, even, like, the morality in Star Wars, where you have this, like, very, like, almost like a pseudo-religion that is then codified into, like, a wider superstructure for like everyone to think about. And you know, also there are some very interesting points about whenever I see these I think they're called spider droids. No, spider droids. I always think about the main villain from Incredibles.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that.
Yeah, because it's that, but instead of having flexible legs, it has straight legs.
Well, either that or that episode of Venture Bros, where Dr. Morpheus got really popular, and Thaddeus Venture washed his spider droid like shirtless, and all of the villains were sweating.
Yeah. So where were we? We were talking about westerns.
Yeah.
So,
well, we were talking about influences on Star Wars and the period after the warring. It was the period after the warring era, And you were saying something about the morality of Star Wars.
Yeah, so it is kind of interesting that Star Wars has this very almost binary morality system, and it doesn't seem like people really want to move away from that morality system. It seems like it's the ingrained de facto
It's
like
taken
way
as read.
Yeah. No one, generally speaking, thinks about like the Jedi Sith binary as being a good or a bad thing. They just sort of like take it as gospel, you know.
Yeah, it is weird. It's almost like honor in a lot of samurai. I like the parallel is like honor in samurai stories, where people are like it's dishonorable to do this, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense, fine.
However, not to fully discount sort of ideas about like chivalry and things like that, because the Jedi are also, in addition to being, you know, somewhat samurai-like, they're also. I'm just gonna turn the game audio just a smidge down. I think it's a little bit.
I can't hear it at all. Wait, but I've got it muted.
It's a smidge loud. It's just a lot of blaster fire is happening. Anyway, so like they are kind of also a monastic order, you know. They're also just like super into. They're supposed to be like a bunch of pacifists. They're supposed to be celibate. You know, a lot
So
of that.
they're like Shaolin,
Yeah, they are like Shaolin, but I
the
kind of
36th chamber of the Jedi.
I kind of wonder why. Maybe it just sounds nicer, you know, like Jedi Knight. It just sounds like a more complete sentence, if that makes any sense.
Well, also because knight sounds like a rank.
Yeah. I mean, samurai is technically a rank as well, but it's not
But
a rank in the same way.
Yeah, it feels samurai feels a lot more like a title or something, but knight feels like okay, well, no. I don't know. I feel like also in the Western world, people hear the word knight and they just like immediately understand. Okay, so kind of a noble, but not necessarily hugely politically powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really does depend, because you know knights were often some of the most influential people in their whole society, but the Jedi are influential in ways that are not necessarily strictly analogous. I think.
Well, I mean, they are ambassadors. Weirdly.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't like own lots of land, you know.
Yeah, but are they? That's the weird thing. What are just Jedi ambassadors to? Like, I mean, ambassadors from?
They're technically on behalf of the Republic.
For the entire Republic.
Yeah,
So they're the law-keeping system.
Well, they're not strictly they're peacekeepers in the same way that like a UN peacekeeper. They're called in to
I'm
mediate.
a peacekeeper. I spend most of my day learning peace techniques with my peace laser sword.
Well, you know, the galaxy is a dangerous
dispenses
place.
cuddles. The American Western audience would definitely connect easier with the concept of a Jedi Knight, Manabrent says. And yeah, I mean that. Like, I feel like if you said before Star Wars became a big deal, if you had said Jedi Samurai or something like that, then people wouldn't connect as easily. Nowadays, probably because the anime boom happened and whatever. But I think Star Wars came out before the anime boom, didn't it?
Yeah. Star Wars was in the 70s, which
Holy
was
shit.
before. That was before anime hit mainstream American/US audiences.
Yeah. Hey, kids out there, if you remember watching Dragon Ball Z when you were a kid, that's insane. Me too. And also, that show was greatly influential in bringing anime to the West.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine being Akira Toriyama? Like, can you imagine one of the accolades in your life is that you brought one of the most popular media forms in your entire culture to a different culture?
Yeah, I think it's super funny because like in a broad sense, anime is still something that is like very deeply tied to Japan. Like we still, you know, like lots of people will call it like Japanese anime. And something that I find interesting is just that like when it comes to, I really got to stop clicking off the screen.
You really do.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm used to like I don't have very good, I guess, trigger discipline for my mouse. I want to make like a very big box when a
It's
smaller
okay,
one would
dude.
suffice.
We're having a chill stream today.
But yeah, as I was saying, it's really interesting because in a lot of ways, from what you see and read about like the way the Japanese companies orientate themselves, they still act as if anime is not this like global cultural thing. Not always, but I do kind of get the sense that a lot of them still act as if they're making this for a Japanese audience only.
It does feel like you have to know a lot more about Japanese culture than is reasonable for an international audience. A lot of jokes in anime are puns based on like, is it homophones or homonyms when a word sounds the same but means something different?
Homophone.
So there's a lot of homophone puns in Japanese because a lot of words sound the same but mean different. Like kiru or keru something means frog, but it can also mean go home.
Ah, I see.
So like they'll construct a joke based around that misunderstanding. And it's like you hear that and you're like, that will never translate into English well.
I see. I think it's a very interesting problem because also, it's like the language of anime is also still like very much just, Japanese. I don't know if like I was just thinking now, you mentioned Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is like really popular in like lots of places that are not Japan. Like
yeah, because the dub is great.
Yeah, it's like I don't think anyone could have foreseen just how like big something like Dragon Ball would get. Like, say for example, in a place like Mexico. Apparently, Dragon Ball is very popular in a place like in South America.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting phenomenon because here's the thing: Dragon Ball started in like the 80s or the 90s. It's still going.
Yeah, I mean
there's a new series now.
Really?
It's Dragon Ball Super, and it's drawn by someone else who studied with Toriyama for a while. And I think there's even more stuff like happening. They still make games for it. It's still crazy popular.
Well, one thing that I think really differentiates a lot of manga, a lot of anime from a lot of Western properties is just the longevity of everything, Like, I struggle to think of series in the West that are like so long-lived as some examples of like anime and manga. I just I can't really.
Star Wars.
Well, Star Wars is a property, but like One Piece is going on forever. Like a single.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
A single piece of media.
Yeah. No, that's insane. It's weird. It's because you know what the difference is? Is that One Piece is like this anomaly of It was always designed to be a very long story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy for people to be like, he never expected to get this far, and he's just sort of making things up as he goes along. There was an interview where I think his name is Ichiro or Eshijo Oda. I know his surname's Oda, but or his first name's Oda. It's weird because the Japanese people write the surname first and then the first name.
Yeah.
So I think his first name is Oda. Oda has said in interviews that he's been waiting to get to this particular arc that started in chapter 800.
What?
Like that's what he's been like. He can't wait for it. And it's like he's planned all of this out.
I think that is just mind-boggling, right? I remember you and Miles were talking about this on stream about like how you're like it took like it consumed your life to catch up with One Piece.
Yeah, I completely caught up with it. And then now I have like stopped reading it again because I caught up with it a few weeks ago, and now I'm weeks behind again. But it's this, you know what One Piece is? It's like an indie game. One of my favorite examples of like how interesting indie games can be is something like Papers, Please, but also Undertale. And there's this moment in Undertale when, like, quite near towards the end of the game, you go to a hotel, and if you go into one of the rooms, you can get under the sheets of a bed, and it creates like this visual effect where you're under the sheet and you just move around, and there's no point to it. You can't. There's no item. You can't find anything. There's no purpose to it. But it's the exact kind of thing that can't exist in a designed by committee game.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that only an auteur would do, because that's like such a niche thing that is designed to, like, basically someone wants to tickle their fancy, and that's what they're gonna do by doing something strange like that.
Exactly, and that's what One Piece is. It is the product of a crazy person who had such a clear idea for a story, and then they went and made it. Oda is an auteur, and he just, like, he keeps going, and he was successful enough that people keep letting him do what he wants. And that's why One Piece is still successful, because if this is what he wants to do, he is an insane person who wants to do 1,000 chapters over 20 years.
Who is the guy who made Berserk?
I don't know his name offhand. Let me look it up.
Because I feel like people feel that way about the guy who made Berserk, but that guy died, unfortunately.
Kentaro Miura.
Yeah, so he had like a super specific vision for what Berserk was going to be, and I respect that a lot because, right? I feel like in this era of design by committee, bland, inoffensive stuff, I feel like deciding this is my vision, I'm going to make it how I wish. I feel like that is really, really important.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you and I have talked for quite literally 2 years now about Ubisoft sandboxes, right? And all of these cookie cutter, the same boilerplate games that come out all the time. It's just the same format, and how bad it is now that Assassin's Creed decided to be less like Assassin's Creed and more like The Witcher, and like that sucks. And because it took a unique identity away from a game so that it could copy something successful. And then you have things like Berserk and One Piece and Undertale and friggin' I don't have any good movie ones. What's a good movie one?
Like a good movie.
A good auteur movie.
The Lighthouse, obviously.
Yeah, The Lighthouse. Like, okay, you have things like that, and people are like, this is so good. Why? Like, how is it so good? And people make video essays on it. And it's because 1 or 2 or 5 crazy people wanted to make something. And then they did that. And no one stopped them. No one said that this wasn't appropriate. Well, people tried to, but they made it anyway, and it was fucking rad. You know how Berserk opens?
No.
Guts is, he sits down by a tree and has sex with a lady. Okay. And the lady turns out to be a demon that's trying to eat him.
Oh, okay.
And then he cuts his way out of it.
Okay.
And then it goes into a flashback.
And then it goes into
of when he was born.
Wow.
And he was born in a puddle of blood underneath his mother's hanged corpse.
Yeah.
Berserk was weird.
Again, Berserk
and
had
insane.
It had something strange to say, and it said it. So yeah, I get. I can respect that. I mean, I definitely find that off-putting, but I can respect that, because they wanted to do something, and they did it.
Like, and that was basically the first chapter of Berserk. It's an insane way to start your story.
Yeah.
But like he wanted to start it that way, and it was gripping, and it worked, and people loved it. And also, by the way, hello, Comrade Sad, and hello, Lucas.
Hey, Comrade Sad. Hello, Lucas.
Welcome to the stream. We're getting heated out here.
Yeah, we're getting heated, and I'm actually beating back the Republic. The Republic counterattack has failed to materialize.
I always knew. I never doubted for a second.
That's why I'm in charge of this space
Delete
navy.
that footage of me doubting.
And also the space army.
Oh shit. Comrade said, Berserk. Your novel is partly inspired by Berserk. You know what else is partly inspired by Berserk? Dark Souls.
I thought you were gonna say
Your novel is your novel is partly inspired by the same thing that inspired the most successful gaming franchise of the last like 10 years.
Yeah.
So you're starting from a good place, dog.
Yeah,
It's an 80s dark fantasy. Also has a similar aesthetic. Yeah, it's like gothic fantasy. It's wild.
The aesthetic, like, one thing that is absolutely true, and I guess this is another reason why people like FromSoft games, is they have such a distinctive image, a distinctive visual language that you can instantly recognize them. It doesn't matter what, like, you can recognize Sekiro as a From Software game in the same way that you can recognize Bloodborne as a From Software game, Like, a lot of games feel super samey. Like, I keep coming back to this, and, I will probably come back to it for the rest of time, but, like, The Division is a creativity black hole.
It really is. The Division is it's not even a blank piece of paper, it's a beige piece of paper.
Yeah, it's a beige piece of paper with the word "This is not political" printed on it.
Yeah. It's no, like embossed on it, so
Yeah.
you can't even draw. Oh, Lucas, what is Berserk about? Amelia, do you mind if I give a quick plot summary of Berserk?
Yeah, go ahead. Like
Okay.
I said, I'm not super into anime or manga, so it's doubtful I will ever properly, fully, ever get into it.
Okay, get ready. Berserk is about a guy named Guts who was born in a puddle of blood and got adopted into a mercenary company. At a certain age, he gets molested by one of the people in the mercenary company, and then he murders that person in a forest later. His dad tries to sell him, and it works successfully, and then he kills a bunch of people, and then he goes traveling.
He has a giant sword, right?
Yeah, he has a really big sword. Oh, no big spoilers? Okay, that's basically just like the first few chapters. The story of Berserk basically is a story of implication. A lot of things are implied to have happened, and it's this weird mix of like historical and gothic fantasy.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, it takes place in like a fantasy world, but it's like a medieval inspired fantasy world.
It's a deeply medieval inspired fantasy world, and before a certain event happens, no spoilers, I promise, but a certain event happens that makes the world a lot more fantasy. Before that, it wasn't, and it's an interesting look at people changing due to their circumstances. It's a weird look at relationships, and how pain tears you down, and one person angrily basically screaming into the void of the world and fighting back against impossible odds. And there's something inspiring about watching Guts, who's just a dude. He's not magic or anything. He's just like a guy trying to fight back against things that are so overwhelmingly powerful.
Yeah, from
and
what
succeeding.
From what I can tell, one of the core struggles one of the core struggles of this show is essentially existentialism or maybe nihilism, right?
I don't think it ever goes so far as to be nihilist. I think it goes It's almost absurdist.
Hmm.
Really, it feels very nihilistic, but it's very much in a like. Even though things don't inherently have meaning and life does kick you when you're down, the things you attribute meaning to will have meaning.
Okay. I mean that is certainly, I think, an appropriate way to live. I think
That's my personal philosophy.
yeah, I think to a large extent mine too. We're on a planet that is a ship graveyard, which is probably,
That's rad.
it's similar to like the one that Cal Kestis started his adventure on. You see,
We're
there's
gonna
like
find a ginger who can do such good force stuff.
Here's a Republic Venator, like the one that was in
You
the
slide down in the opening scenes of Jedi Fallen Order. Oh, and it's March. In like 18 days, I believe,
yeah.
the new Jedi Survivor game is coming out.
Yeah, supposedly.
Oh yeah.
What are your expectations?
I am expecting that for some plot reason you will lose all of your force powers again.
Oh.
And you will have to gain them back.
Okay, so again, spoilers for Jedi Fallen Order, but at the end of the whole point of that game is that you were like you lost your connection to the Force, and you had to like basically at the end of the game you end up back where you had started before you lost your connection. So
it's about overcoming trauma.
Yeah, it's about overcoming trauma. So I kind of wonder if maybe what they'll do here is like, okay, well, here's your baseline. Maybe it would be interesting to have you like develop further, because I know there's going to be like like different fighting styles. Apparently there's going to be something called blaster style, which I think is very funny.
Yeah, they have a gun. You have the greatest horsepower of all gun.
Just a gun.
So long, Lucas. Good luck with your homework. Also, if you're gonna consume Berserk, read it. Don't watch it.
Oh, is that just like a general recommendation?
Yeah. The animes are of varying quality. It's difficult to like find one that's good all the way through. I would suggest, because a lot of them use bad CGI. The comics are always good.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. I can see that. Well, if the comics are, you mean the manga, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The manga.
I would deeply recommend it. Berserk has some of the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I can totally. I've heard nothing but good things about the art style of Berserk. So.
Yeah, the story. I think people like the content of Berserk is probably what turns people off of it. But
you mean how it's
everyone
like super graphic?
It's very what people thought anime was, like all anime was. There's graphic violence and there's nudity and all of that stuff, but it's all in service of something, you know? It never feels it never really feels gratuitous, even though it feels graphic. It's just like it's very easy to see that stuff and be like, oh, this is a 12-year-old boy power fantasy.
But it's not.
And it can be that if you want it to be. It can also be, yeah, Comrade Tad's right. It can also be quite triggering. So, if you're triggered by, the general rule of thumb, Comrade Sad, is to avoid most fandoms, especially anime ones. They're not good. They're weird, gatekeepy, toxic weirdos. Don't interact with them. Just enjoy the fun comic on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Berserk can be very triggering for people. Like my friend Yana can't do gore. So she wouldn't be able to read Berserk, even though I think she would deeply appreciate the art.
Yeah, well, I also have some issues with gore as well.
Which is wild, because you like Warhammer.
Warhammer is not that gory.
I feel like it is.
I mean, there are some instances where I feel like Warhammer is a little bit gory, but generally speaking, oh, it's our old buddy, Moff Tractor.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're gonna put him out to pasture.
he is about to deal with a armada of our finest warships.
Emilio, laugh at the most excellent pun I've ever made, please. Thank you. Yeah, there's this weird thing. So, no, Manaburn, I wasn't saying that. Berserk is on a whole other level of gory. I just thought that Warhammer was pretty gory as well. On the topic of anime fandoms, and Emilio, feel free to weigh in. I think it's that they're so toxic because Japan still subscribes to a very patriarchal view of the world and a very like puritanical view.
We got him, by the way.
Nice, we got him, boys.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
I was about to make that joke. But yeah, I think Japan, a lot of manga authors and stuff have this sort of like puritanical view and very patriarchal view of women in particular. So I feel like a lot of anime and manga fans get influenced by that, and those are the ones that join fandoms.
I will answer in a second. Callum, how do you feel about building the CIS Senate right next to the Coruscant Senate?
I would love it. We can play our music loud and then just like not respond to their letters.
We have an option of building a CIS Senate, right? Which is the capital of our faction. I'm thinking about building it right next to the Coruscant Senate, which is the Senate on Coruscant, which is the center of the Republic. I think it would just be really funny.
Yeah, do it.
But we need to save up money.
You have my go-ahead to do that.
Okay, yeah, so... Yeah, I would agree to a large extent that I think the patriarchal norms of Japan definitely influenced like the kinds of people who get into the like they have they're called NEETs. Like the NEET thing started in Japan. You have all these guys who are like socially disaffected, economically excluded, and stuff like that. Wowzers! That is a bigger fleet than I was expecting. It's fine. We'll deal with it. And yeah,
I believe in you.
A lot of these guys. They have issues, and I think in some ways anime is their escape, and so they feel like they have like an ownership to it, which is also not a good idea.
It's like a parasocial relationship with a piece of media.
Yeah, not just a piece of media, but like the concept of the media in general.
Yeah, which is wild. It's like when streaming software calls anime a genre.
It does?
Yeah, like Netflix for a while had anime as like a genre.
That's weird.
And that is weird, right? Because then you would get things like Elfen Lied next to things like fucking cupcake, sugary, strawberry, high school girl life go. And it's like that these two things do not belong together. Comrade Sad says, I think Berserk, with as little spoilers as possible, plays heavily into power dynamics. Yeah, Berserk in particular is kind of uncomfortable in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of parts that happen that are supposed to be uncomfortable. Like, there's a decent amount of, it's weird to say decent in regards to this sentence, but there's a not insubstantial amount of like sexual assault in Berserk, but it's never portrayed as a good thing. It's portrayed as like a genuinely horrific thing. Like it's one of the reasons that this one character, and no spoilers, I won't say who it is, but it's one of the reasons that they spend the majority of the story unresponsive. Like before that, they're very capable and very social and very outgoing, and then after that happens, they just like
shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time for them to like get used to being around people again.
I think a similar argument could be leveled at something like Goblin Slayer. Even though I feel like maybe Goblin Slayer is a little bit less tasteful in its depiction of certain things. Arguably, it had like a really graphic first episode, and it's never as bad as that first episode, which is, I think, a very strange thing, right? Whereas I think Berserk keeps its adult themes like consistent.
Yeah. First of all, hello, Melipona. Welcome to this conversation.
Hello, Mona. Yeah, sorry you had to jump into the discussing the trauma of Berserk.
Yeah. But Comrade Sad, for instance, says, spoiler, there is a very graphic rape scene which often gets a lot of defense from its fan base, which is absolutely disgusting. Here's the thing. I don't think that there is a tasteful way to do that. I think that there's a bad way to do it. Like, there's a very bad way to portray that, but that is not inherently ever going to be something that you can portray as, like, tasteful. You can't use metaphors to skirt around it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It is something disgusting that happens because of power, and it's awful, and it's meant to be upsetting. I will agree that the Berserk scene, the scene in Berserk kind of lingers on it in a weird way. And that can be off-putting, definitely. But that becomes a matter of interpretation, I think. I interpreted it always as, it's definitely meant to be a terrible, horrific thing that happened. It is the beginning of like the dark ages for this world, and it begins with the most horrific act a person can do.
I realize I've made a mistake. I've sent a bunch of fighters against the space station.
That's such a wild, like, thing to say after my whole deal. So this is my treatise on why I think this one particular scene was good. Cool. I sent bad spaceships.
No, okay. So you and Miles have like you guys will banter and stuff like that. But I think one of the issues is that like it doesn't take too much brain power to play space engineers. But if I do make one mistake, we'll lose this fleet and we might lose the war. So I just have to... I gotta
say that. My guy, I have blown up so many things in Space Engineers by accident.
Yeah, but that's because it's specifically...
I'm stupid.
It's easy to blow stuff up in Space Engineers. It's not the simplest game in the world. No, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think there is a good way that you can... Wow, that one bomber is destroying that entire frigate shipyard. So maybe I only did need to send one bomber. Nice. Jeez. I told you the CIS had a superior starfighter complement.
Hell yeah. Just real quick. So, Comrade Sad says, I think the scene itself actually didn't need to be so graphic. It's kind of like the shock in Game of Thrones. And Melipona Place says, yeah, that's why I never watched Game of Thrones. I think that's a very different situation. Because Game of Thrones is an adaptation that threw these things in for shock value. Like the scene at Joffrey's, it's not quite a funeral. That is done purely for shock value. That wasn't in the story. Daenerys' night with Khal Drogo on their wedding night. In the books, Daenerys, like, quote unquote consents as much as a 13-year-old can consent, but then again, it's a medieval society. How do you measure childhood in a medieval society where people are living to like 30 at the most?
Yeah, it is quite... It is a much more complicated situation, which obviously is not done any favors by, like... It's one of those situations where, like, modernity has made the past horrific, but a person in that moment wouldn't... Because there are, like... How do I put it? It's like, there are bad people for that time, and then there are bad people for our time, you know, if that makes sense. Like, someone like Euron Greyjoy is a bad person for his time. People actively point out that he's completely psycho, you know?
Yeah, and that
even by
makes him
the
a terrible person
yeah,
for our time.
yeah, even by the standards of his day, he's an absolute psycho in terms of the things that he does to people. But like some people have pointed out, I think it was friend of the channel, Hillary from Hills Alive. She's pointed out that even like Catelyn Stark and Ned Stark don't exactly have like the most. Like there are iffy bits to their relationship where it's like there are aspects of it where like Catelyn doesn't necessarily, they don't necessarily have like the same conception of consent that we do. And
Yeah, yeah.
they're portrayed as having a very loving relationship, and I think to a large extent that's true. But there are also still like
By
things
modern
that,
standards.
yeah, by modern standards, they wouldn't exactly have what we would consider to be a healthy relationship.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly a power dynamic in their relationship where Ned kind of has the last word simply by being quite literally the most powerful person in the room. But there's also a weird power dynamic where Catelyn is clearly more intelligent than Ned is.
Oh yeah. She very clearly
Hillary explained to us there's a scene where Catelyn says like sometimes she has to wait for Ned to mentally
catch up.
catch up. Jeez.
One of the problems I think that existed with Game of Thrones is that a lot of the actors who were chosen ended up like portraying the characters in a very different way from what the book intended. Like
You've made this point before, like with Tywin Lannister.
Yeah, I was about to say Charles Dance is a much more suave, sophisticated, intelligent person than Tywin Lannister is.
Tywin Lannister is kind of a just like an angry douche.
He's an idiot.
He's not an idiot. He's not like stupid, but he's not like
he's not like
genius.
He's not like this master manipulator. I am playing 5D chess while everyone else is like playing marbles.
No, he's just good with words and like uses his power. Most of his solutions to problems are like
bad solutions.
I use my power to say no.
Yeah, well, a lot of his solutions just basically end up causing more problems because they're like, oh, I'll just do a show of force and then end up like alienating these people who could be my allies just because Tywin is insecure and all of this stuff. It's weird stuff,
And he also ends up being just like his dad.
Yeah,
but
it's definitely true that Sean Bean, I think, is like the best version of Ned Stark. Like a version of Ned Stark that is just not per se on the text.
Sean Bean as a person has been kind of iffy lately. Sean Bean as an actor, like whenever he plays a character, that character it's so generally charming.
Have you watched the Sharp series by chance?
The Sharp series?
Yeah, the Richard Sharp, based on the series of books by Bernard Cornwell.
No.
About the Napoleonic Wars.
I have not.
It's okay. So how I haven't seen like Monty Python.
Wait, Miles is here. He's watching us from the gym.
What? Miles,
he wants us to beatbox so that we can give him a better tempo for the treadmill.
Miles, please don't judge my Empire at War gameplay. All right, I know you play this game as well.
Miles, Emilio keeps telling us that we're good streamers. I want you to have that joy in your heart.
You and Callum are objectively better at streaming than Callum and I am, and therefore my only conclusion is I'm bringing down the streams whenever we do them because I watch your guys' streams. I don't watch it instantly. I have to wait, give it some time. But you guys are always funny and always like you have some interesting stuff to say, and it's just I don't know how you guys they're like.
So I've realized that
I don't know how you do it. It's weird.
Yeah, it's because I haven't sung this stream yet, Comrade said. It's because I haven't improvised a song about vamping. But, no, you are a known liar. I realized that I just said yeah in the middle of what you were saying because I was agreeing with what Miles said, that you're a known liar. And it sounds like I was agreeing with you. But, okay, back to what we were talking about.
Yes.
Manabone says, yeah, there's a serious difference between making a point and the shock of it. If you've seen the Westworld TV series, it has a similar way of addressing this than Berserk. I haven't seen Westworld, so I have no frame of reference.
I
But
have.
Comrade Sad
I've seen
said,
Westworld.
you have?
Yeah. It was that. If it's like a sci-fi show that has like vaguely Western like
I've
aesthetics,
seen the
I will have
first
seen it.
season of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the show went off the rails a little bit as things went on. Manaburn can confirm or deny that statement, but oh god, they have a turbo laser.
Man, you just say Star Wars shit in the middle of things, and it sounds like Willy Wonka is writing your lines.
Fall back, droid guys.
They have a Googleplex.
They've got a turbo laser.
A Dyson Cube. Oh no. But yeah, then Comrade Sad counters our many points with, I think the scene from Berserk at the very least needs to be viewed with a bit of consciousness. There can't really be a debate around character name did nothing wrong. I know that debate. That debate is a joke. Comrade Sad, there are definitely people who take it seriously, and those people are weirdos and creeps. It's a joke, though. It started as a joke, and it should have been as a joke. That's the whole thing. Is it's meant to be like, it's not a particularly tasteful joke, but it's a joke.
Yeah, I think there is a problem with certain ironic types of humor where after enough time, for some reason, eventually, even the most ironic jokes will stop being taken as ironic and they will start being treated as like real, if that makes any sense.
Comrade Sad says, I think the TV series for Game of Thrones actually has a much bigger equality gap, at least between genders, but also between classes than the novels. I would disagree heartily with that.
Wait, what do you mean by class gap, Comrade Sad?
Yeah, because there's a lot more like peasants dying in the books and shit. There's a lot of like indentured servitude in the books. In one book, Tyrion is kind of a slave and then is definitely a slave.
Yeah.
And that's not even the like. If we're just talking class gaps, there is such a big like. It's so wild. I don't agree with you there because the books have more time to go into it than the show does. The show has to display the class divide and the gender divide and everything visually or with dialogue, but the books get to go on for paragraphs.
Mm-hmm. Also, you get to see someone's internal thoughts, but you get to read someone's internal thoughts, which you don't necessarily get to do in a show.
Yeah, and also that makes certain interactions with other characters way different. Because if you don't get to see the internal thoughts of a character, trying to guess what they're thinking is insane. Like, in a show, there's at least, like, a common ground of, like, I kind of have to guess what everyone's thinking based on their facial expressions, but they can show you through physical reactions to things and good acting, like, what this character's may be thinking. And that influences the interpretation. But, like, Cersei doesn't get perspective chapters until book 3 or something. So we just have to fucking guess what she's thinking, man.
A good point. There are certainly issues, especially with... Oh, I guess we're doing war crimes. Miles, is it a war crime to blow up a building that is technically a civilian building, but it's producing militia that's helping the enemy?
Miles, stop doing pull-ups and answer us. Also, Miles, which kind of bile? Yellow bile or black bile? I need to know for your humors. Are you melancholy or choleric?
I think I'm melancholy. What about you, Callum?
I'm definitely melancholy. Or maybe phlegmatic.
Yeah, I could see you being a phlegmatic. I have a completely...
But that's just because I'm an empath.
I have a completely non sequitur hypothetical question I was thinking about earlier today. Do you mind if I ask it?
If you will let me tell you a joke first.
Go ahead, please.
It was a meme I saw, and it's like, why do those little kids on Xbox Live always know which slurs to call you, and the comment was, it's because they're empaths.
Okay, that is a really funny joke.
What's your hypothetical?
Okay, so you know 1984, right?
The George Orwell novel or the...
The George Orwell novel.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know Aldous Huxley's Brave New World?
No, explain.
Brave New World is Aldous Huxley. He also wrote dystopian fiction, but like unlike 1984, where Big Brother is like the super tyrannical, oppressive government, in Brave New World, the dystopia is sort of maintained by basically through vices and consumerism, right? You have people who are kept in a sort of controllable state because they're always doing drugs or being promiscuous or just engaging in entertainment. You know, a lot of the work that is...
It's like the exact opposite of Big Brother.
Yeah. People police themselves. They don't necessarily need a cop. One of the core aspects of the story is that there is a guy who is born outside of the system who experiences it, right? So he's born outside of like the mega city or whatever. He gets born in the wasteland. My English teacher once asked me in high school, she once asked me, which would you prefer living in? And I said 1984, and she, without even second guessing it, she's like, yep, that tracks. And I always thought about that, you know,
Okay.
So which one would you prefer, Callum? Would you want to live in 1984 or would you want to live in Brave New World? Also, chat, which one would you prefer? Because I know a lot of you are literary nerds, and therefore you guys will actually know the references that I'm talking about.
Melipona is apparently a sanguine, so I guess she wants Brave New World. But you know what? I think I would also live in 1984.
I wonder, Chad, what do you think? Are we being correct, or is that just like a bias on our part?
But let me give a reason.
Okay, sure.
Let me give a reason. The main character of 1984,
Winston.
even like, yeah, I didn't finish the book. At one point, he sort of like starts hanging out with this girl and discovering more and things, and he becomes happier. And that's the rebellion in 1984, you know?
Yeah, being happy.
Like, the rebellion is enjoying things. And can you imagine how incredible it must feel to be happy in a generally bad world? It would be hell to be in Brave New World. Because if you've ever been on a bender, it sucks.
I've never had a drink in my life, so...
Okay. I've been on like a weekend bender before where we're at like someone's farm or something. And fuck me, it's so bad at the end. It's just like you don't want to be around anymore. It's not even like I don't want to be alive. It's like I don't want the idea of me to ever have existed. I feel horrible. And that's what it would feel like, is you would become either numb to everything, or you would just like be terrible all the time. If I drink too much on one day, and nowadays that means like 4 drinks, but if I drink too much on a day, I have to stop for like 3 days before drinking sounds like a fun idea again. Doing that every day sounds awful.
Yeah, it's like, so the main issue about, well, not the issue, but the main sort of horror about Brave New World is that like nobody feels like their life has any meaning because no one has to really do anything. They don't form meaningful relationships. They don't really have people that they care about or things that they're really into, just because everything is so accessible to them, you know. Although there are like issues, there are problems with the society. So for example, a lot of the, if I remember correctly, a lot of the work is done by basically a slave caste of people who are engineered at birth to be like dumber than everybody else.
Oof.
Yeah, and also one point that was brought
Oh,
up.
that old chestnut, huh?
Yeah, there's one point that I thought was really interesting. Also, I don't mind going a little bit later on the stream today. But
Yeah, me neither.
there was one point that I found really interesting, which is that when you view Brave New World through like a feminist analysis, you start to notice that like things are not necessarily completely hunky dory on both sides, right? So, for example, there aren't like there are supposed people don't have to worry about like loads of people are very promiscuous, but nobody ever worries about like children out of wedlock, right? It's actually very unusual that the protagonist of the story had like a natural birth, and all of that stuff, right? It's very unusual because a lot of that stuff is handled with technology, right? But if you read between the lines, and I think a lot of people ought to, what you'll see is that a lot of the burden of all that healthcare is of all like making sure that you're not going to fall pregnant, reproductive stuff is on the woman. They're the ones who have to take all the pills and stuff like that. The men basically have completely no responsibilities, and that's really
It's almost like our society.
yeah, yeah, because it's replicating a patriarchal system that is extant in our world. And okay, wait. We should probably they're asking for stimulus.
Wait. Before we get into that, there's a couple chat things that I want to read out.
Yeah, go ahead.
To you. Miles says it is definitely not a war crime to blow up a building that is technically a civilian building that is producing soldiers for the enemy, so we're all good. Nice. He does say it is a war crime to use the building for that purpose, though.
Oh, so the Republic were committing war crimes then. I see.
Yeah, and wild. Who would have thought? Ponderosa Dworkin starts talking about something called Soma.
Soma is a... if I'm not mistaken, that's what the drug is called.
Oh.
Also the name of one of the Amnesia games. Which is, I think, also, is a reference. But anyway.
Miles then says, aren't they also genetically engineered for specific social costs too?
Yeah.
Mention the point before you did. Ponderosa Dworkin would choose Brave New World. Melipona Plays asks what your obsession with order is.
My obsession with order? Interesting.
Human beings are an order-obsessed animal, and I have words to say about that, and I will later.
Well, if you there are two driving forces that I think have animated my personality.
There are two wolves inside of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I make that joke, but like, I think that I have two animating forces: a desire to seek out conflict and a desire to seek out order. And I think that's why I'm really into Warhammer.
Wow. Zombie God, who is very new, I think I've seen them in a couple of streams before, says, I'm so happy that you stream on YouTube and that you still stream even if you have 6 viewers. Yeah, I mean, I think the highest amount of viewers I've ever had personally is 10, so I don't care. These 6 people came over here to watch our videos specifically, so I want to put on a show for them.
Yeah, you guys give us your time, and I want to be respectful of that, which is why we try to be professional. It doesn't always work out, but I'm always appreciative that someone decides to choose to spend their time to watch us,
it's very cool.
I'm not the best player of this game. There are definitely other people who play it better than I do.
But we're good at talking. Ponderosa Dworkin says, TBH, I die in both worlds. Miles says South Korea is pretty much 1984 and he lasted 2 years there. Hell, he misses it.
Yeah, I can see that, Miles. I can see that.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
I just need to get through these. Manaburn says, oof, it's like one evil or another evil, and Melipona Plays fucking drags me. For Miles, Emilio. Yeah, in 1984, you might get a date, comma Callum! Exclamation point. Hurt feelings.
Oof. Ouch. Damn.
This is, but I am deeply hurt.
You don't always have to. It's not the drag Callum hour. I mean,
no, you can drag me a bit. It's fine. I'll remember this when I have to do an art stream, and I'll just show like 40 minutes of blank paper. Ponderosa Dworkin says, Brave New World is a philosophical mess, but 1984 is probably more sexist.
Oh yeah, for sure. 1984 is like completely like women don't have rights in 1984. Like women have rights in Brave New World. Not
Yeah.
as many, but they still have rights.
Okay. You know what? Maybe I'm gonna change my answer to Brave New World because then my rebellion can be like drinking tea instead of drinking acid.
Yeah, I guess for me the thing is I don't have many. I don't have like in terms of like what the book describes as vices. That stuff doesn't really appeal to me. So like, what would I be doing really? When I had this conversation with my English teacher, I pointed out that like I do want to feel useful, and in Brave New World, it's very hard to feel like you have a function in society just because everything is sort of taken care of by vaguely, nebulous forces. Whereas at
Fuck,
least,
you're making this sound awesome.
whereas
I
at
would
least,
lie on a fainting couch all day and like paint naked people. That would be my
well,
entire life.
well, yeah, maybe. I
I
guess
would design sweaters for dogs.
yeah, I think what I'd probably do in 1984 is probably be like one of those scientists who's working on a thing that is constantly just being changed because the party can't decide who we're at war with.
Manaburn says, I kind of feel maybe there is more the illusion of free will in 1984.
Yeah. One of the major revelations, spoiler alert, is that a lot the character, I think his name is John, kind of realizes at first he thinks, oh wow, this is really interesting, this society, but then he realizes, wait a minute, it's actually kind of a nightmare, because I think the purpose of it is that you have an outsider perspective. Like the thing about 1984 is that Winston is an insider. He works for the party, right? Like he has to have a realization that the system he lives in is horrific and bad and all of that stuff. But the point in Brave New World is that the protag is outside of that system. He lived completely differently outside of that system, and therefore his perspective on that system is like the horror, Whereas for everyone else, it's just seen as normal.
Yeah, it's a Tuesday. So Ponderosa Dawkins says, I mean, Huxley puts the native populace into a very bizarre place. Orwell just disregards any native existence.
I don't think in 1984 there is even a concept of indigeneity, if that makes any sense. I feel like the control of Big Brother is so totalizing that like the idea that you could even be from a place and that would mean something, I don't know if that has any
the enemy.
Yeah, but like,
because aren't they constantly at war with like Europa or something?
Yeah, I think it's like East it's Oceania and Eurasia or something like that. But
yeah,
no, for sure. Like the reason why the protagonist of Brave New World is the way that it is he's described as living with like a tribe of people who, technically speaking, I think would fall under a lot of like stereotypes for indigenous people. But in 1984, I don't think the concept even factors in. I don't think anyone belongs anywhere, in that kind of world.
It's less that it's a place to live, and it's more like it's like a list that your name is on.
Yeah, you're in existence. You're not. It's like in Half-Life, right? I always tell this to people. Like, if you want to see the best example of dystopian fiction in the modern era, you just need to look at Half-Life and what happens in Half-Life, right? Everyone in like City 17, not Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2, actually. Like the the Combine destruction of Earth is one of the most insane. It's like watching a civilization be destroyed in slow motion, right? People aren't like, every person is moved every 6 months. Nobody can form any kind of permanent connection to everybody else. Reproduction completely switched off. Everyone is being turned into these transhuman police. It's a horrific system that only gets worse and worse the more you look at it.
All right, well, I'm almost caught up with the chat. Okay, Ponderosa Dworkin says, I've waited a very long time for someone to bring up a Brave New World in conversation. Manaburn concurs. They reply with, believe it or not, it doesn't happen often. Largely unemployed jumps in with a hot okay bye, climbing with Kelly now. Melopona plays, swings back with a was it too mean, but follows it up immediately with a Razdia for 30 points. Ponderosa Dorgan coming in with hi, I'm dying at that drag. There is an emoji, Emilio. Melopona Place says you can do what Midwesterners do and just sit around singing songs and shucking corn and walnuts and such. That's our vices, lol. That's what I do now. That's my current life. Except without corn or walnuts, because I don't have those. If someone gives me those, I will shuck them. I'll shuck the hell out of them while I sing. A lot of the songs I end up singing end up sounding country.
Yeah, I've noticed that actually. You do have. Well, is it because you can put on a country accent?
Yeah, it's because I'm white. No, it's because I could do the country accent well. And one of my favorite songs growing up was Country Road.
Ah.
By John Denver.
John Denver, yeah. That is a good one.
It was in a Ghibli movie. That's why I know it.
It was in a...
It was in Whisper of the Heart.
They used it as Fallout as a Fallout promo.
We're such fucking nerds. You heard that song because of Fallout, and I heard that song because of a beautiful Japanese movie about a young girl falling in love with a violin boy.
Well, I guess that goes to show, like, out of interest, who's your favorite faction in Fallout?
Which Fallout?
Let's keep it to like maybe like the main line. Okay, just like who's your favorite Fallout faction in general?
None of them.
None of them. You don't.
I avoid joining factions for as long as I can.
Really interesting.
In any game, to be honest, because I never like any of them.
Well, I can see arguments for that. Personally, I quite like the Brotherhood of Steel.
Of fucking course you do. Of fucking course you like the Brotherhood of Steel.
What? What's wrong with the Brotherhood of Steel?
They're such douches, Emilio. They're a frat with robot suits.
Okay, I mean, I will buy that to some extent.
Comrade Sad literally just said anyone but the Brotherhood of Steel.
What? No, the Brotherhood are awesome.
They call they're like soldiers paladin.
Yes.
They're definitely Mormons, Emilio.
Well, that's funny that you mention that because there are Mormons in Fallout, and they're not like the Brotherhood.
This is also Comrade Sad says this is why me and Emilio can't watch Avatar ever again. Do you mean James Cameron Avatar, or do you mean Avatar: The Last Airbender?
James Cameron's Avatar. I like the ships. I don't like the Na'vi.
I think James Cameron Avatar is stupid. It's basically a graphics test with a flimsy plot and some really well acted, well shot moments. I think the story is trash though. It has the greatest line in cinema history.
Which is what?
It is a white dude in a suit, kind of holding up a rock and saying, "This is called unobtainium." This thing I have in my hands.
Yeah,
that I have obtained.
It's really funny how.
Sorry.
It's really funny how unobtainium is just completely irrelevant to the rest of the story.
And super glossed over. It's like brought up once and then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter in the second movie.
No, they're getting alien whale brain juice.
Look,
the second movie.
I like technology, and it's very easy to. It's very. I'm very easily swayed by the side who I think has, like, the better hardware. And in the case of Avatar, it's like completely obvious that the Na'vi don't have a leg to stand on in terms of like. Not. I don't know how they would be able to stop the RDA. You know, like
I don't like either of them.
I don't per se like the RDA, but I think the human faction is more interesting than the Na'vi. That's for sure.
Like I don't like either of them. The humans are awful. There are no good characters in the human side, except for maybe Jake Sully, and I only like him because he has the interesting story of like having to pick between a functioning body and, you know, his people and whatever, it's the most interesting story, and he's still boring. Like, I don't like anyone on the other side. The Na'vi seem kind of really self-righteous.
Yeah.
And they fuck everything. With their hair.
It is...
Like, really think about that for a second? How do the Na'vi horses consent?
yeah, that is true. That is... I mean, it is kind of weird. I don't know. I think if... I think the problem... Like, the Na'vi are too... Like, I don't really... Like, I don't... How do I describe it without sounding like a complete monster?
While you figure that out, I'm gonna read the chat.
Yeah, sure. I just think that, like, the movie wants to have its cake and eat it with regards to, like, wanting to be a complicated, or at least wanting to be a like a nuanced story, but, like, the humans are like cartoon
really
villains. Yeah, the humans are like...
they invaded a planet to get something under a big tree.
And then they just start killing whales in the second movie. Like, they can clone people. Why wouldn't they just clone the whales?
Because the alien brain whale juice stops the human aging process, Emilio. Don't you understand?
Yeah, but why couldn't they just
Fuck me. That's so dumb.
Why couldn't they just clone the whales?
Okay, so to read the chat, Ponderosa Dworkin says... Oh, well, first of all, Manaburn says, did you guys notice the Halo slip? He just can't help himself. I didn't notice the Halo slip. Apparently, you slipped up and mentioned a Halo thing. Oh, because you said Covenant instead of Combine.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. I've been thinking about Halo a lot.
When aren't you? Ponderosa Dworkin says... Brave New World uses indigenousness as a, like, reverse strawman for naturalism. And it comes off very pan-native. And then they ask me what I shuck. I shuck the patriarchy. Just
okay, we gotta
decide for yourself what that means.
We gotta not get overrun here. They have so
what we are overrun with is comments.
They got so many goddamn tanks.
Does anyone know why 1984 and Brave New World and Lord of the Flies and the like are such staples of English education? I've never gotten it. I don't know.
Oh, I feel like they're books that...
I think it's because they involve young people.
Yeah, I think especially something like Lord of the Flies really, like, touched on people's sensibilities. You know? Because the point of Golding's novel is not that... It's sort of like he's trying to make a dig at people's idea about what civility means, you know? Like, oh, here are these British kids. You know, they could never be these horrific monsters. And yet, you know, in the story, they are horrific monsters. So, you know.
Yeah, I think also all three of those books, they wear their philosophy very on their sleeve.
Yeah, I can see that.
But those were never books that I had to read in high school. We read sad books about women being sad.
Like what?
Except for Feed, which was about a teenager being sad because a woman died.
Well, I mean, we read...
It was like Zoo City.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was a deeply cynical book, and like nothing in Zoo City dissuades you from believing it should be cynical.
I remember reading The Crucible and thinking, God damn, no wonder America turned out the way it did. if the Puritans were going to be the ones, you know, establishing like a society, no wonder America turned out, you know, the way that it did.
Man, books in high school are depressing. I got really depressed when I got to matric because what we had to read in grade 8 was Stormbreaker, the Alex Rider book. Mm-hmm. And what the grade 8s got to read when I was in matric was The Hobbit.
What?
Because the movies had come out.
That is so unfair.
Now. Yeah. It sucked. The Hobbit is the only J.R. Tolkien book I've read.
The Hobbit is objectively like one of the best adventure stories ever written. Right?
Yeah, it's great. It's one of the best influences I've ever had because it showed me that fantasy doesn't have to be about like saving the world. And kind of prefer the story of The Hobbit to the story of Lord of the Rings. The movies, Lord of the Rings blows the Hobbit movies out of the water every time, but
No.
like just
I'm 100% with you there. I feel like The Hobbit is objectively, well, at least not objectively, but it's subjectively, it's the more interesting of the two stories. I
because
prefer
it's like
way
it's
more.
so it's kind of small scale, so everything is people's choices.
God.
You know, like it feels often like in Lord of the Rings, Frodo doesn't really have a choice. He's just doing quote unquote what's right.
Yep.
Is your computer having a seizure?
I clicked at like the top of the screen to select a unit, and it.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Melopona Plays says, Callum, we have something in common because I avoid joining factions. Hell yeah, Melopona, we're free spirits. Turns out I might be sanguine too. Manaburn says, Ponderosa, I feel like we need to dive into this further. You absolutely can on the Discord.
Yes, we have a Discord.
Go and do that. Ponderosa says, I mean, come on, Avatar World would you mean Pandora? Would probably have lots and lots of oil. Why bother with unobtainium? Because it's unobtainium.
Yeah, look,
We have to obtain it.
for some reason, I don't like a lot of the stuff doesn't make any sense. Like the energy required to send a ship in the way that they do. I mean, it's not necessarily known if they're getting more energy out of that process than what they put in. So, yeah, it is a bit weird.
Melopona, I know I don't have to read every part of the chat. I enjoy it. Ponderosa says male sensibilities. Manaburn says white male sensibilities. Probably me. That was probably me they were talking about.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
It's the only way it could make sense, Emilio.
Well, I feel like I have a lot of guy sensibilities, but
Yeah, but you're not white.
yeah, I mean that's true. But like culturally, I don't really think I'm very Indian. Like, do you think I'm very Indian?
Well, you might be more like South African Indian and like Mumbai Indian are very different.
Callum, culturally, I am South African.
Yeah, no, we're both South African culturally, but like there's a difference between South African Indian and like Indian from India.
Yeah, and I'm different to that.
You're different to both of us.
Yes.
You're a third worst thing.
I'm just myself. I don't really fit into a lot of the other categories, you know. But okay, Republic, you can run away now, right? You have like one little tank is not gonna.
Once we finish this fight, we'll probably end.
I might have to. Okay, they're retreating. Thank goodness. I might have to just do a couple of admin things for the planet, but then after we do that, then we'll probably end. Just because if I don't do it now, I will probably forget to do it when the game starts.
I think the whole male sensibilities things was still the talk about Brave New World in 1984. Because Ponderosa replied with, the authors have to invent worlds without women just to make their philosophies make sense.
Oof. Ooh, that's a spicy one.
That's
I think
hot meatball.
I think a lot of it definitely has to do with the
bad accent.
I think a lot of it definitely has to do with the fact that, like, you know, at the time that we're talking about, you know, women like don't have rights; they're not seen as equal people. The agency of women in stories and stuff like that is just like non-existent practically. So
the French.
it's what we can build.
You know why I've realized. You know how you keep saying like me and Miles have a better stream presence than you?
Yes.
You know why that is?
Why?
Because I lose my mind about an hour into the stream, and our streams rarely go over an hour.
Uh-huh.
And I have now hit that point of like, all that's left in me is references, including the one I just tried to make to a champagne commercial. French, known for their sensibilities.
What champagne commercial are you even talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about.
It is a layered reference, Emilio. It's a reference to Game Grumps, which references this champagne commercial about a Californian champagne that's made in a French style.
What?
I am. You're playing Empire at War, and I'm playing like, crackers. I don't know, a game. I'm playing Cluedo. Professor Plum did it. I'm 100% sure. I just have to break it to the I have to gather all of the people in the parlor and Poirot the fuck out of them. We're not getting over this train until I figure out which one of you killed this gangster, I guess.
Okay, so final wrap up of the military situation before we end. Things are looking good for us. We have secured access to... We've basically cut off Coruscant at present. They're cut off from literally the rest of the galaxy. So it will only be a matter of... Yes?
Emilio, it's pronounced croissant.
All right, you got me there. I just want to send a probe droid out there just to see what we've got left. But I think in the next stream we might actually be able to finish this campaign. Because it'll be one big space battle against the largest Republic fleet that they've still got, and which is over there. They've got a big fleet, yeah. Which is, I think, it's as big as... It's pretty big. It's pretty damn big. And they've still got
in the chat.
Yeah, they've still got a bunch of other stuff. But I think we can mop up these 3 planets relatively easily. And we paid a subsidy to the trade union, and they just gave us a bunch of stuff. So that was nice.
We paid the subsidiary?
We paid them a subsidy.
What bold warriors you
No, we gave them a stimulus package, and they just decided to give us a planet.
Like Vikings, we conquer all that we see. And Jesus wept. No, folks in the chat, please, when we finish this campaign next stream, bring another example of classic literature for us to talk about. And also remember to check out the description, because there's a relief fund that you can donate to for an earthquake that recently affected Syria and Turkey.
Yeah.
If you donate to it, first of all, you're helping a lot of people that need help right now. And second of all, if you get a little letter from the company that tells you, thank you for donating. If you send that to us over Discord, we will give you limited access to our Patreon. And we have a bunch of videos on Patreon that only the patrons get to see. You get access to that. It's maybe not the best reward in the world, but the real reward is helping people who really need it.
Yeah. And if you were planning on donating anyway, why not get something for it,
Yeah. And from us. But you know what? If you want to donate to this channel, we've got a lot of great ways to do that. Primarily, what we need from you is time, not necessarily money. Money would be great, but both would be fantastic. That's how you get into the good books. But what we need is watch time and subscribers. So please tell people to watch our videos. Get them to subscribe. Then if you want to support us even further, we've got Patreon. And if you don't like monthly commitments, you can buy us a coffee.
Yeah. I would just make an appeal to you guys. We're very close to hitting the subscriber requirement for...
Maybe we should do a sub drive. Like a subathon.
Yeah, maybe, because we're very close. I think we need 69 subscribers.
Yeah. We talked about this on the stream on Tuesday. The 69th subscriber of this era of our channel will also be the 1000th, and what a time!
Yeah, what a privilege that'll be. But we also do need watch hours, and once we get monetized, we can do things like actual setup, donations. And
we can finally add in the cool emojis that Frogs designed for us for Pocket Laser and Swordsmith.
We have like actual emojis and things like that. So the sooner we get to actually being a monetizable channel, the better off everyone will be, I think. And
like, just to give you some incentive, when I stream specifically on Miles's channel and he has donations open, they make us do things. The first time I met Miles in person, I had to wax his feet because of a donation.
What?
Yep, you can make us do things, maybe.
Within
Think of
limits.
the chaotic powers. Think of the chaotic powers that money will give you over us.
Yeah, I mean, to a limit, of course, but like, yeah, obviously, you know, you can get.
No, I mean, like, I'm not gonna kill. Well, I mean, let's see the cashish first. How much hot cheddar are you putting on this sandwich? I'm losing my mind. We have to
Yeah,
go. Join
alright.
the Discord if you want to talk to us.
Yeah, take care, everybody. Have a nice
Bye
night.
bye.